Lady gamers and gentle crafters, welcome to Christian Craft. We play Minecraft while talking about God, the Bible, Christianity, and just about everything else. Today, we are going to make some progress building our base, and we're joined this episode by a Happy Ghast who has no name yet. If you want to name this Happy Ghast, drop down in the comments. Whatever comment gets the most likes will be the name of this Happy Ghast. I've seen some good names. Tobias, Toby for short. BB. Kogane, which is a dope JJK reference. It literally looks like him. Enar. Jimmy. There's been a lot of good names. So, go down in this video. Comment down a name for this Ghast. Go back an episode, to episode 9, drop a name there. And between those videos, whichever name has the most likes, maybe I'll drop a poll. And I will determine the name of this Happy Ghast based on y'all's input. Last episode, we created a mineshaft. We got a Happy Ghast. We got some food that we almost completely ran out of immediately because we were fighting ghasts in the nether. So I think we start this video off in the mines, get some deep slate for the foundation of this house, and maybe get some diamonds while we're at it. I want to at least start on our base, at least start on the house. Because there we go. There we go. At least start on the house because we don't have a house yet, guys. That's problematic. We need to have a house. And I want to get a villager trading hall, but I can't in good conscience make any other farms until we have a place to rest our head at night. So, we're going to start the house. Probably not going to finish it. Let's be honest. I always get distracted or get killed or something crazy happens. But we're going to try to stay on task today. So, let's do that, shall we? I'm going to kind of... Wow, that's a difficult word. Too early in the video for difficult words. I'm going to excavate. I am going to excavate this area. And the reason my screen is standing still is because I was putting my phone away because it keeps buzzing. I'm going to excavate this a little bit. This is our mine. You just jump down in this scary hole and you're at bedrock level. I don't know if bedrock level exactly, like right above bedrock is the best for diamonds or if it's like Y level. I have no idea. I genuinely don't know. My inventory's full. Let's go deposit our inventory. And then let's lock in and play some craft, shall we? It seems really quiet. I wonder why it seems so quiet. We'll watch this video back and see how the audio is. Maybe it's cooked. But if the audio is cooked, God is still dope. Smash like for how dope God is. Guys, I took a physics exam the other day. Low-key did terrible on it. But that's not because YouTube's a distraction. I do terrible on physics exams regardless, and our professor curves them like crazy. So it's all good. But I got a 96 on my biomedical microbiology exam. So, smash like for academic excellency. We already have quite a bit of deep slate. That's pretty good. Yes, guys, I know. It's disgusting. The state of my living is bad. Oh, did we not lose our gold last episode? Huh. I totally would have thought we had no gold left. Whatever. But we're not getting distracted today. We are going to stay on task. What are you doing, creeper? You're not going to blow up, fool? Ooh, he tried to spin move me. Holy moly. Okay. A for effort, bro. Put some sauce on that. That was crazy. I've never in my 22 years seen that. Well, I'm not 22 yet, but I don't know. I round up, I guess. It could be one day over half of the year, and I just round up. But guys, I'm just super blessed by this channel. I say it all the time. I say it all the time, but I want to just thank you guys for the support. I'm like less than 2 weeks into this channel and I have way more views, way more subscribers, way more engagement. It's just very encouraging. And I want to just thank you guys, each and every one of you. I really appreciate all of your support. I'm thankful. So we're going to get some diamonds, but first I kind of want to clean up our mine area. Eventually I'll make this look pretty. Like a lot of times I play Minecraft, I tend to do function over form. You know, we're on episode 10 and we still don't have a house. We just kind of lived in a villager hut for the beginning of this series. I want to try to make everything look beautiful, you know? I want to try to make everything look beautiful. If you guys ever have build ideas, drop in the comments what types of things you want to see me build. I think that could be a lot of fun. So, yeah. This is a lot of stuff. We're probably going to just like touch it up and then finish it later. Because I really do want to just get some diamonds. My phone keeps buzzing. I hope you guys don't hear every buzz, but like, I always get anxious when I record. Like, what if somebody calls me and there's an emergency? Like, I have no idea why. I just like always assume the worst is going to happen, which is not a good way to live your life. Be prepared for the worst, but don't assume the worst. That's just not going to produce anything fruitful in your life. Not going to produce anything fruitful in your life. I'm going to probably make this whole, like I might close that off. I don't know. We're going to make this area look beautiful. Right now, we just wanted to get the job done. So let's go mining, shall we? Boom. Sick. And let's just go this way. All right, guys. We've had a lot of dope conversations on this channel. A lot of dope conversations. And I think we're going to find like a 10-minute conversation. Because I don't want to do a whole lot of like mining during these VODs. Like, I think that's probably boring. I also don't want to mine off camera per se, because I know that's sketchy. I did some off-camera mining, and then you have full netherite. Definitely sketchy. So, we're going to here and there do some mining, and that's where we can, like, have a focused conversation, because this is just, like, I'm not very, like, deeply focused on mining. I can like, put all my thought into what we're talking about. So, let's mine for, like, 10-ish minutes. Hopefully find some diamonds in that time. But if not, we're primarily here for deep slate. We want... Whoa, wowzers. So we're going to pivot. And yes, I know, don't be quick to make fun of me in the comments. I know it's more efficient to do like a 1x1 mining tunnel, because you only mine one block and it shows you 4. Like, I know that's more efficient. I don't have a trap door. And I don't have a bucket of water either. So, we're doing this. Good old-fashioned strip mining. Whenever I'm doing, like, strip mining in Minecraft, I think of, like, that GIF or that meme of, like, the guy who stopped digging and he was right about to find treasure. I love that meme so much. It'll, like, I'll see something like, dude, I just couldn't get into One Piece. It was, like, it's just so long. And then it's that GIF, but instead of there being diamonds, it's like digging to garbage. Like, that cracks me up. Like, I think One Piece is pretty good, but like, that is still hilarious. Like, I said this a few videos ago. You can enjoy something and enjoy the slander of that same thing. You know, slandering JJK characters is the funniest thing. You know, it's just, we need to all lighten up, you know, have a good sense of humor. But while we mine, I want to talk about this is amazing. Whoa, this is a lot of diamonds. Whoa, it's a lot of diamonds. Look at this. Look at that. we can get an enchantment table, folks, and have some to spare. I'm not a big... I usually like... Enchantment tables are not usually the way that I get enchants. I usually just like... One of the first things I do in Minecraft is get villager trading hall set up. But maybe we'll roll some enchants on just like to try to get fortune. We're not going to like roll enchants on diamond armor. That to me is just a waste because you can get prop 4 and like... It's one book that you put on all your armor, so it gets rid of a lot of the guesswork. But maybe we'll roll for a good pickaxe. But maybe I was just about to say we're going to start talking, and then I found diamonds. So I'm going to say, today we're going to start talking about... All right, no diamonds. But for real, we're going to talk about something. Is somebody knocking on my door? Or is that Minecraft? I'm going to check my phone to see if somebody says they're knocking on... Nope, no one's knocking on my door. And if they are, I'll answer it later. Because right now I'm Minecrafting. I was saying that I don't want to do a whole lot of on-camera mining. But I also don't want to do off-camera mining. So I'm thinking live streams. Live stream until we get 100 diamonds type theme, type thing, type beat. Live stream until whatever XYZ happens. I think that would be a lot of fun. We're going to pivot again. Right is always right. Oh, left is the move. Right is always right. We're going left. So, we're going to talk about my personal favorite argument for the existence of God. And I'm going to admit up front, if you do not believe God exists, you will probably not be convinced of this argument. Because it sounds too good to be true. It sounds completely just made up, bonkers, circular reasoning. I admit that to the untrained eye, this argument for God's existence seems kind of weak sauce. That being said, with 100% honesty in my heart, I think this is the strongest argument for the existence of God. Wowzers. Let us go this direction. Or should we explore the mine? Nah, the mine shaft's going to have googlies in it. I don't want to mess with that. Don't want to mess with the googlies. This is my favorite argument for God's existence, and I think it's one of the most powerful. The most powerful, in my opinion. Not powerful in its ability to convince people. I think the more convincing arguments are like the fine-tuning argument. Am I at the wrong level? Should I be going down one? It just dawned on me I should probably be going down one. Well, we found diamonds at the other level we were just doing, but I don't mess with the sunk cost fallacy, okay? You're never in too deep to change. Let that be the life lesson of today's video. You are never so far gone that you shouldn't change. You're never in too deep that you shouldn't recalibrate or make a new decision. Anyways, what is this argument that I say is the strongest but least convincing? The fine-tune argument, I think, is pretty convincing because it appeals to our natural wonder of this world. Humans just have a natural awe for beauty. You know, like objective beauty exists. Sorry, atheists, it does. Go to the Grand Canyon, look at outer space, look at the intricacy of the human eye. The universe has beauty in it, and human minds recognize and appreciate beauty. That's why we create art. We have beautiful architecture. We make music pleasing to hear, paintings pleasing to look at, food pleasing to taste. We love beauty. And when you appeal to the beauty of this universe and say, look at how beautiful and also finely tuned everything in the universe is, I think that's very convincing even if a person's like, no, I don't believe in God, but I understand why people believe in God, because if Jupiter were 0.0000 whatever fraction shifted to the right, then Earth would be pelted with asteroids every 5 seconds. You know, like, or if the cosmological constant was changed by 1 degree, like 1 times 10 to the 120th power, some crazy number like that, if it was changed by that small of a fraction, the entire universe would fail to expand at the proper rate and would collapse in on itself. You know, like, last episode, we talked about carbohydrates and like homochiral centers and like how they're vital to human existence. It's just like everything that interacts with itself is so intricately put together. And atheists will just say, when you stumble upon a puddle and you see water filling that puddle, are you like, wow, this puddle was perfectly crafted to fit the water? You know, like, go, okay, man, go ahead, be like that. At the end of the day, you're the one suggesting that puddle, like that divot in the earth, began to exist spontaneously and uncaused, you know? So go ahead and straw man, false equivalency, the fine-tuning of the universe, whatever. I reject biological determinism. I believe that all things are ordained by God. That includes biology, but I don't think biology is super... I have never sung into the mic like that, bro. If this is just like, I just cooked my mic and like the audio is totally terrible, maybe I'll edit that. But I'm really sorry for your ears. I just am excited. But yeah, I think we see the fine-tuning of the universe, and it just like, yeah, maybe there is something bigger than ourselves. Now, this argument is not really like that. This argument is called the Modal Ontological argument. It was one of the very first philosophy books about the existence of God that I read. You know, like the Kalam Cosmological Argument by William Lane Craig. That one's classic. On Guard, William Lane Craig. You know, Reasonable Faith, and there's so many good apologetics books. Alvin Plantinga, super slept on, super underrated. Christians into apologetics, check out God, Freedom, and Evil by Alvin Plantinga. So, why do I bring up God, Freedom, and Evil by Alvin Plantinga? Because in that book, he makes an argument. I don't know if that book is the origin of the argument. I doubt it. I'm just assuming that he reiterates his argument. But Alvin Plantinga uses this system called modal logic, which is basically like a language of axioms and logical symbols, and I don't know what other words to use, but basically it's just it's a way of communicating logical truths, right? But let me explain it in a simple way, because when I was a sophomore in high school and I read that book, I didn't know what any of that meant. But when an awesome YouTube video explained it to me like a dum-dum, because I was a dum-dum, and I still am, you know, God forgive me, for I am just evil and silly sometimes. Oh, guys. We have no crafting table. We're coming back for you, diamonds, and we're coming back with fortune. And this video explained it. Not saying you guys are dumb-a-dums. You guys are smart. You're smart because you're watching Image Bear Minecraft. Smash like. But he articulated modal logic like this in this video. Modal logic is the system by which we can understand things without them explicitly being stated. And let me give you an example. Whoa, that launched me up high. That's fun. Let me give you an example of what I mean. If I say premise A, every Friday, Image Bear plays Minecraft. Premise 2, today is Friday. Using modal logic, you can deduce out of logical necessity that I am playing Minecraft. I never stated that I'm playing Minecraft. It was never demonstrated that I'm playing Minecraft. But if those premises are true, then the conclusion is true. This is exactly the system that math operates by. If x equals 2 and y equals 3, x plus y equals 5. You know, like that is the logical framework of modal logic. We need to craft a new pickaxe and probably make a new chest. So the clutter is going to continue, folks. And we're using birch logs to make our chests because I'm not a big fan of birch. Drop in the comments what your favorite wood type is in Minecraft. But back to modal logic. Modal logic is the same logical framework that math operates by. It's a way of knowing a conclusion is true based on the logical flow of the premises. This is going to be our chest used for house building materials. We're going to start organizing. Remember what I said? It's never too late. You know, don't believe the sunk cost fallacy. We're going to implement that right now. We're going to clean up our lives here. So I'm going to repeat just so that we're a full understanding. Every Friday, Image Bear plays Minecraft. Today is Friday. Therefore, Image Bear is playing Minecraft. That's so simple, right? We do that in our everyday lives. We make logical conclusions every day in our lives. So now we're going to kind of like have a backwards view on all these arguments I've communicated in prior videos. You know, everything that begins to exist has a cause. Okay, that's true. The universe began to exist. Okay, that's true. Therefore, the universe has a cause. That means the conclusion is true because the premises hold and the conclusion is a logical flow from those premises. That's what modal logic is. So now, the modal ontological argument, what is that articulating? What is the modal ontological argument articulating? Well, ontology is basically the theology of being, of nature. Not nature like outside, outdoors, the natural realm. Nature like a person's nature, you know, the nature of a thing. That's what ontology means. And the ontological argument was first formulated by Anselm, Christian philosopher. And the modal ontological argument is a formulation of that argument using modal logic, that system of logic I just told you guys and explained. We're going to have a backup shield because I'm thinking we're going to need it. Also, I'm just like trying to forward think. I think I want to put like a pool of water here. Oh, you're fully grown up. Did I not notice that because I was yapping about ontology? I don't know what to call him. I don't know what to call him. So drop in the comments what his name's going to be. So the modal ontological argument is the formulation of Anselm's argument with modal logic. And forgive me, Alvin Plantinga, if I don't repeat the premises exactly word for word. And I might mess up the argument and then I break the logical flow of it. But these are unscripted videos. And I think people need to share opinions more often with the caveat of like, I'm not an expert and open for correction. So I want to demonstrate that by, if I'm wrong or you guys are like, I don't see the logical flow in that, Riggs, comment on that. I'll never be offended. Anyone who corrects me, I'm just happier that I'm closer to the truth. As long as it's like a righteous, solid correction, not like everything, you know, your videos are terrible and you need to do this. Like, that's going to hurt my feelings. So I'm not saying that. Don't be ruthless. But if I make an error, correct me. I'm open to correction. I know we keep just running back and forth willy-nilly, folks, but we do need to breed those animals because we're running low on food. The modal ontological argument. First, we need to define what God is. If you've watched these videos before, you know what God is. God, definitionally, out of logical necessity, is a maximally great being. That is the ontology of God. The nature of God is a logical deduction, and this argument communicates how God's ontology can be deduced from logic. In other words, God as a maximally great being is the highest conceivable being. Where did the pork chops go? There they are. God is the highest conceivable being. We cannot conceive or conceptualize or think of a being higher than God, right? Because that's what it means to be a maximally great being. And maximal greatness is not subjective. Maximal greatness is intuitively known because it's a fundamental foundational truth. The nature of objectivity and subjectivity is independent of your understanding of it or your value of it or your affirmation of it. It is true, right? So maximal greatness, what is the highest conceivable being? Maximal in power, maximal in goodness, maximal in love, maximal in knowledge, etc., etc., etc. Eternal, spaceless, timeless, like transcendent above all things. That's a maximally great being. So God is the highest conceivable being. That is Anselm's argument. His argument essentially goes, if you can conceive of God, a maximally great being, the highest conceivable being, a highest conceivable being must exist. And that seems like that's just self-referential. That is just a circular logic, right? You're saying, Riggs, that a big pizza must exist. Therefore, a big pizza exists. Okay, I get why it sounds like that. But now let me explain Alvin Plantinga's formulation of the modal ontological argument. This is why it sounds too good to be true. Because the first premise of Alvin Plantinga's argument, if true, demonstrates logically that God must exist out of logical necessity. I'm not saying that means you must be convinced by this argument, and if you don't, you're an idiot. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying out of logical necessity. In the same way, if I say every day Riggs plays Minecraft, every Friday Riggs plays Minecraft. Smash like for door slamming in the background. Every Friday Riggs plays Minecraft. If that premise is true, and it is true that today is Friday, necessarily I must be playing Minecraft. So necessity means it is required to be true logically if it exists necessarily. And if something is contingent, it means it is dependent. It requires something necessary to be true, right? So, for example, for me to be playing Minecraft, if I play Minecraft every Friday, must it necessarily be Friday for me to play Minecraft? No. But if the premise is true, right? Assume this is true. Riggs only plays Minecraft on Friday. Today, Riggs is playing Minecraft. Therefore, necessarily, it must be Friday. Because that conclusion depends fully on that premise. So the first premise of Alvin Plantinga's argument is if it is possible that God exists. It is possible that God exists, right? It is possible that a maximally great being exists. And then it's a logical deduction from there that God must exist logically, right? That's why I say I understand why you're not convinced of this argument. It seems like a stretch. I get that. I definitely get that. And give me a moment to articulate it. Let's define terms. God is maximally great being, the highest conceivable being. A being that is the highest conceivable being is the necessary causative agent of the universe, right? If a highest conceivable being exists, if that is possible, why is the logical conclusion a maximally great being must exist? Why is that a conclusion? Well, this is Alvin Plantinga's argument. It is possible that a maximally great being exists. If it is possible that a maximally great being exists, then a maximally great being exists in some possible world. What's a possible world? A possible world does not mean a parallel universe that like exists in actuality, right? I'm not talking about a multiverse. I need to put a data pack. I usually play on realms that have a data pack where you can just put cobblestone and get stone. If you guys think that's cheating, I won't do that. Can you put deep slate in and get deep slate bricks, please? Yes, you can. Okay, so we're building out of deep slate bricks. Guys, we're laying the foundations of this house. For sake of staying on track, I am going to communicate the entire argument and then go back and explain it. I'm going to communicate the entire argument and then go back and explain it. Okay? And this is no tutorial. This house, no tutorial. I'm just literally throwing things down and we're going to make it as we go and see what we get. Smash like. It is possible that a maximally great being exists. If it is possible that a maximally great being exists, then in some possible world, a maximally great being exists. If in some possible world, a maximally great being exists, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then a maximally great being exists in all possible worlds. If a maximally great being exists in some possible world, then if a maximally great being exists in all possible worlds, then a maximally great being exists in the actual world. If a maximally great being exists in the actual world, then a maximally great being actually exists. I'm going to repeat it one more time. I'm not saying I'm going to state this and you're going to agree or understand. Just let me state it. I'm going to explain it, and then I'll reiterate it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, now that I've counted, I'm going to reiterate this argument. It is possible that a maximally great being exists. It is possible that God exists. If it is possible that God exists, if it is possible that a maximally great being exists, then a maximally great being exists in some possible world. If a maximally great being exists in some possible world, then a maximally great being exists in all possible worlds. If a maximally great being exists in all possible worlds, then a maximally great being exists in the actual world. If a maximally great being exists in the actual world, a maximally great being must exist. So, that argument, is it nonsense or is it based? I think it's based, and I'll explain why. A possible world, like I was saying earlier, is not a tangible world that exists. It is the idea of possible worlds is something philosophers and, masters of logic utilize to determine if something is logically sound. Let me give you an example. In some possible world, I played Pokemon Champions instead of Minecraft tonight. That's certainly true. Logically, that's conceivable. Logically, that's valid and possible, right? If it is possible, it exists in some possible world. That's what this argument is saying, okay? If it is possible in some possible world it exists, that's all it's saying. Possibility is appealing to the logical capacity of something, right? Is it in some possible world, does a unicorn exist? Yeah. Because a unicorn, a fictitious animal, a non-real animal, there is nothing logically incompatible in its nature. It's just a horse with hair that's rainbow colored and a horn. If all the biologists of the world wanted to get together and make that a real thing, I bet they could. It doesn't exist in the actual world. Unicorns do not exist in the actual world, at least not to our observance. But in some possible world, unicorn exists. What are some things that do not exist in any possible world? A square circle. In no possible world does a square circle exist. In no possible world. Because that is a contradiction in definition. Logically impossible. A married bachelor. A married bachelor is a logical impossibility. So, in no possible world does a square circle exist. The smell of blue, Or, if you're a Christian and you've heard this argument, can God create a stone so heavy he can't lift? Haha, I just debunked Christianity because omnipotence is impossible. Pump your brakes, Buster. Chill out. Hold your horses, buddy. That question has nothing to do with omnipotence paradox or God's omnipotence. That question in it of itself is a logical impossibility. It's a logical contradiction. In no possible world does a square circle exist. In no possible world does an unliftable, liftable stone exist. That's not a debunking of God's omnipotence. That is just, I don't want to burn down the fences, so I'm going to just do this the old-fashioned way. That's not a paradox of omnipotence. That's not a paradox of God's nature. That question is a paradox. Can God create a square circle? Can God create a married bachelor? That is not saying, see, God, there are things God can't do. God is limited by nothing except our minds. God is not limited by anything other than his nature. God acts according to his nature, right? Jesus never sinned because in God, no evil exists. God is maximally great. Therefore, God cannot sin. Oh, God cannot sin. Therefore, he's not all powerful. Chill out, kid. That's not what omnipotence is. That's not what being all powerful means. Being all powerful means maximal power, maximal ability to cause, maximal authority. And the highest conceivable being is a being that we understand logically, and that's God. And God, in the Bible, is a being higher than we can even conceive. We can't understand his ways. So if you're debating somebody and they're like, God is a logical impossibility because God can't make a stone so heavy he can't lift, just say like, okay, bro, like, my God is not bound by the logic you're bound by. I don't use that argument because I don't think God is illogical. I think God is consistent. But that's besides the point. I just defined what possible worlds are, what the actual world means, right? The actual world means what is real. If you're a physics student, a math student, you're in STEM, you kind of intuitively understand what I'm saying. In some possible world, if we know the sum of the forces going into this equation, we know the net force. If in some possible world you have a coil that is this long with this much resistance, that's what math is. You're calculating something that is true and possible and, in a sense, real, even if it never exits the realm of the theoretical. And this argument for God's existence argues from the theoretical and brings it into the tangible, into what is real, what is observable, what is knowable in the actual world. It takes what's theoretical and makes it actualizes it, right? So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time defending each point, and I'm going to explain why I'm not going to explain each point in this. Every single premise is a logical flow from the other. There is no debunking each premise. Each premise is simply a logical flow from the first premise. That's why I think this argument is so dope and really unique. Because in the cosmological argument I articulated, I said everything begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Well, if you disprove either of those premises, the argument falls apart. Whereas this argument, you can't really attack any premise other than the first one, because they're all just a logical flow from the first premise. And let me explain why. If the highest conceivable being possibly exists, that means in some possible world, that highest conceivable being exists. Okay. Meaning, if we can conceive of this being in this world, then in some possible world, it is possible that being exists. Okay? Does that make sense? Have I lost you? So now, the part of the argument where people might think there's a jump is maybe premise 2 to premise 3. Okay, I agree. If it's possible God exists, then in some possible world God exists. Got it. Cool. Gotcha. But the next point is, if God exists in some possible worlds, God exists in all possible worlds. People might think that's a jump, and let me explain why it's not. Because again, this is a point of definitions, of ontology. God, by definition, is the highest conceivable being, the being that is the causative agent of all things, the uncaused cause that all things, by which all things exist necessarily by. All things are contingent on that being. We're going to go explore to get some dark oak. I want some dark oak. Let's take some bread with us. Hopefully this is enough. We have a response sent. See you later, nameless happy gas. Drop in the comments name for the happy gas. God, by definition, I'm not even saying in reality. I'm talking purely hypothetically and purely in the realm of logic here. By definition, God is a maximally great being, a being by which all conceivable things are contingent upon. If it is possible that that being exists in some possible world, then in all possible worlds, that being must exist. Because if it is logically true, it is logically possible, logically compatible that that being exists in some possible world, then out of logical necessity, all possible worlds require that foundational truth of a maximally great uncaused cause. God is a foundational truth. By definition, God is the blanket that we throw over God as a term because God is so ubiquitous. God is so big and necessary for existence, and we say his name so casually. It is possible that God exists. Then in some possible world, God exists. If in some possible world God exists, God must exist in all possible worlds. If you accept the premise flow from 2 to 3, then the rest of the argument is just, it's sealed. Because if God exists in all possible worlds, every conceivable world, a highest conceivable being can be conceived in all possible worlds, then a maximally great being must exist in the actual world. And then, of course, if a maximally great being exists in the actual world, a maximally great being actually exists. I'm going to explain that even more, but I just want to take a moment to appreciate. Look how dope our house is, how much aura it has up on that hill. We're going to have a village area. We're so close to this outpost where we can have an ominous bottle farm, make a raid farm. We are in a really good location. Oh, dark oak, let's go. I want to find some dark oak saplings and spruce saplings. So let's explain the argument a few more times, one more time, as many times as we need. Because I understand, Riggs, it just sounds like circular reasoning. Take a moment, please. It is healthy to have skepticism. I'm a big fan of skepticism, of natural skepticism, of testing all things, being certain of things. I am a big fan of that. I'm also a big proponent of trying to understand an argument, even if I disagree with it. So even if you don't believe in God, try and understand what I'm saying. We don't feel this way about math the way we feel about God. If I say math is required, logic is required, it is necessary for a conceivable world to exist, then in every conceivable world, math must exist, logic must exist. I don't think people would disagree with that point because we're saying a logical world requires a logical framework. We live in a logical world that can be known and conceived. So in every possible world, every conceivable world using logic must have logic. That is circular reasoning. Math is circular reasoning. Morality is circular reasoning. If somebody asks me, Riggs, why should I subscribe? Because you should. Well, give me a reason. Well, because you should. Why should I subscribe? Because I said so. Why do you say so? Because you should. That's circular reasoning in a fallacious way, in an unhelpful way. But there are types of circular reasoning that are self-referential objective truths, meaning why is morality, why is murder wrong? Why is torture wrong? Why is rape and abuse wrong? Because they are. They're fundamental, foundational, objective, self-referential truths. Where do those come from in a universe of matter and energy? Naturalism fails to address that. So I've made many arguments of why I think it is reasonable to have faith in God. And I think this argument is like nail in the coffin why God exists out of logical necessity. Because if in our universe we can conceive possibly of a maximally great being by which the universe and logic itself and morality itself and math itself, modal logic itself, is contingent upon, then in every conceivable world, every world based in logic, every world with the same systems that we have, every possible world must have that maximally great being that all things are contingent upon. And if all possible worlds, that being must exist, then that being must exist in the actual world. Therefore, God actually exists. What the heck? Oh. Sorry, I don't want to die. I really want to like be clean on my, oh my goodness. I really want to be like clean on my logic here and clear in my explanation of this. I don't want your failure to understand the power of this argument be my failure to articulate it. I want it to be purely assessed by the logic of it, not by my human flaws. This argument is powerful because it says if it's possible God exists, God must exist out of logical necessity. Did you guys remember back in video 1, back in episode 3, like in multiple videos, I have staked my faith in Christianity on only 2 things. And those 2 things are, is it reasonable that God exists? Is it reasonable that Jesus rose from the dead? I believe those are the only 2 points logically required to adhere to the Christian faith. I'm not talking about being a born-again Christian and the faith and the submittance to Jesus that's required. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what is required for it to be logically reasonable that Christianity is true. And those points are, oh my goodness, those points are, God exists. It is logical that God exists. It is reasonable that God exists. And it is reasonable to believe that Jesus rose from the dead. So, in those videos that I was referring to, I said, if you want to make me an atheist, prove to me that God as a being, demonstrate to me, convince me, demonstrate that it's at least reasonable, not even 100%, but just demonstrate that it's at least reasonable that God as a conceivable being is a logical contradiction. Prove to me that God cannot exist in any possible world. Your burden of proof is so low. I'm not even saying you have to prove to me that God does not exist in this world. If you could even prove that God cannot exist even conceptually, if you can demonstrate that God cannot even conceptually exist in any possible world, I would be an atheist. And the converse is true. The opposite is also true. If it is possible that God exists, I believe it is reasonable and out of logical necessity that God exists, and that modal ontological argument is why. I love that argument. And if you disagree, I love to talk about that argument. So it's a win-win. If you like it, I'm encouraged. If you think that's a logically sound argument for God's existence, I'm encouraged. And if you're not convinced by that argument, I'm excited because then we get to debate about it. So if you disagree, drop in the comments, hey, Riggs, I don't see the logic of this argument. Riggs, I fail to understand this argument. Or maybe, Riggs, I understand this argument, but there's false assumptions and you're incorrect. Maybe it's not just a failure of understanding. Maybe it's a failure of logic. Demonstrate to me the failure of logic, and I will agree with your position, your worldview. I've stated my burden of proof. I've stated many reasons I have for my faith. If you are not convinced of my faith, of my worldview, of my belief in God, that's okay. I want to hear your worldview of why. I want to hear why you don't believe God exists. I want to hear why you don't believe Jesus is the Son of God who rose from the dead. I want to believe why. I want to understand why you believe that, because I want to know what's true. If Christianity is true, I want to be a Christian. If atheism is true, I want to be an atheist. if it is unknowable if Christianity is true, if it's unknowable that atheism is true, then I'd be an agnostic, you know? I hope that all makes sense, you guys. I almost said you friends. You friends? I hope that makes sense, you friends. Aw, no. This is so sad. I want just one spruce sapling before I leave. Please, just one spruce sapling, but it's so difficult because everything's on fire and zombies and skeletons are hurting me. And I'm super close to pillagers. Oh my gosh, this stuff is so scary. Well, did I just freeze to death? Good game. Did I just freeze to death? Yep, I'm freezing to death. Oh, I'm fine. I am such an overreactor. I'm such an overreactor. In every single one of my videos, I'm like, oh, I'm dead. Oh, I'm dead. And then I'm fine. I don't think I have anything else to say about the argument. I think I've said my piece. If you disagree, let me know why. Give me your argument. If you agree with it, awesome. I want to get a spruce sapling. Oh my gosh. I want to get a spruce sapling and then go. Oh my goodness. Leave me alone. I'll get a spruce sapling and then go home. Please, a spruce sapling. Just one. Where'd you go? Oh, they're right behind me. He's right behind me, isn't it? I have over 4 of those, so that's good. Guys, once again, I just want this video to record so bad. I hope the recording is good. I hope the audio file is good. I just hope this is a good video. I just want to make the best content for you guys. I just want to honor God in all that I do, talk about his existence. One spruce sapling, please. Yes! Okay, let's go home. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's go. And then we'll end this video on a high note. We got diamonds today. We laid the foundations of our house. We have this wood types that we need. Maybe we'll get pale oak and other woods. Maybe we don't have them all. Whoa, hi there, baby zombie. You're scary. I'm going to do one quick explanation of the summary of this video, because if you made it this far and your head's just jumbled up as my head, that's going to look so good. Oh my gosh, that's going to look amazing. I'm excited. I'm not going to follow any building tutorials except for farms, right? Because farms, like the video we're talking about last video, we talked about how structure relates to function. The way a farm looks determines how it behaves. The structure of it determines its function. Do we get a dog here? We got a friend last episode. Do we get a new friend this episode? Yeah, so I'm going to watch tutorials on like how to build a farm. But as far as like my builds, yes, let's go. Dude, now we have another comment. Drop in the comments what we're naming this dog. Drop in the comments what we're naming this dog. But yeah, I want to just build everything without following a tutorial. So that foundation, maybe it's like asymmetrical. Maybe you don't like it. That's okay. I want to build everything from scratch. I just want it to be like authentic and, you know. Now that we're back home, oh, let's plant these. Almost forgot. Now that we're back home, let's wrap up this video. I am arguing that it is logical that God exists because if you can conceive of God, the highest conceivable being, by which the ability to conceive is contingent upon, then logically God exists. That's my whole point. If you agree, drop in the comments. If you disagree, drop in the comments. If you made it this far in the video, please subscribe. I really appreciate it. Consider subscribing. Doesn't cost you anything, and you can always change your mind. Guys, what a good video. We got a dog. We laid the foundation of our house. We got diamonds. We got trees. God is so good. You know, think about Minecraft. I am an intelligence animating what occurs in this Minecraft world. You know, there's villagers in this world. You know, there's beings that dwell in this world. And ultimately, it was a mind greater than the minds within this game that coded this game, that is acting in this game, you know. That's basically my argument. So, let's eat some carrots. Let's have you sit And let's end this video. I want to get everyone in frame. Smile, cast. Smile. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a blessed day. Believe in God. Believe in Jesus. Follow the Bible. Let's have such a great time tomorrow when we play again. Signing out for now, boys. Ciao.